we're going to do an exercise. So raise your hand if you have either said or someone has said to you, I don't watch the news anymore, it's too depressing. Okay, that's what I expected. But if I can't start with good news, right? Because that's what I do now, but I'm a storyteller. And my personal story is what led me to be standing right here in this exact moment. And without my personal story, I wouldn't be doing what I'm doing now. And I know that I'm in a room full of very open, heart-led, intuitive, spiritual, entrepreneurial women. And there are a lot of signs and synchronicities throughout my journey, and they're all really important as to how I got here. So at some points in my talk, you might be wondering, okay, well, what do pest control and Hallie's grandma have to do with good news? But I promise, it connects. Today's about connection, and I feel very honored to be here and be connected with all of you. So I grew up coming to Sarasota. I'm from Chicago. I've been coming here since 2002 because my mom's parents, my Gigi and Papa, built a house here. And this has always been my special place. This has always been my special childhood place, my family vacation place. And I went to college at IU, Indiana, and I studied broadcast journalism. And I was applying to news stations all over the country because when you're studying journalism and you want to be a reporter, you kind of have to pay your dues and start in small markets. And so I was applying to Idaho and South Dakota and all these places. And I wasn't hearing back. And I kind of started to let that self-doubt creep in and think, well, it's spring of my senior year and maybe this isn't the path. So at this point, my grandmother, my Gigi, had already passed away a few years prior. And I probably had applied at this point, it was March, I would apply to 40, 50 stations around the country. And all of a sudden I get a call from a 941 number. And I'm like, oh, Sarasota, interesting. The only person I know there is my grandpa. And I answer the phone, and it's the news director at SNN, which is Channel 6 in Sarasota. And he says, I don't know if you've ever heard of Sarasota, but I'm the news director, and I found your reel on YouTube, and we're looking for reporters. And I said, I've been coming to Sarasota my whole life. And he basically said, call your grandpa, ask him some questions about us, and call me back, and if you don't, I'll keep calling you. And I was a college kid, and I wasn't even happy with my reel yet, and I just kind of put it out there because I was open to everything, and I was like, I'll update it later, but I just want to get something out there. And I didn't think it was good enough. I didn't think I was good enough. But this one person saw something in me. And so I got the job offer on my papa's 75th birthday. My entire family, who lives in Chicago, was in Sarasota celebrating his birthday, except for me. I was at school. So I was like, okay, I see you, Gigi. So I moved here 5 days after I graduate college. I started as a general assignment reporter, working Sunday to Thursday, filming a story every day, going and shooting what we call a package, which is about a 1.5-minute segment that you see on the news. And then I quickly became the 1 o'clock anchor and then became the evening anchor and was still turning stories every day. So you kind of wear a lot of hats. You're shooting your own content, you're editing it, you're writing it, you're producing it, all the things. And I'll never forget the moment that I realized that I was not going to be a typical journalist. I got sent to breaking news in Nokomis, about 25 minutes south of here, and a car had hit a biker. And it was May, I had just started, I was 22, it was 100 degrees out, and this man was laying in the middle of the road covered by a body bag. And his daughter showed up because she obviously had gotten the call that her dad was hit by a car. And comes up to me in hysterics and says, do you know where my dad is? Have you seen my dad? And I'm standing there with a camera on my shoulder and have never felt worse in my life and less aligned with what I was doing and the kind of person I am. So that was only about 2 weeks into my career. So from that point on, I decided that I was going to cover the good stuff. And you don't see a lot of that. But that was what I was going to do. So I looked for the feature-y, uplifting stories. and got made fun of for that a lot, because when you do those things, oh, Hallie likes the fluffy news, she likes the light news, you're not considered a real journalist in a way. They literally teach you in journalism school, if it bleeds, it leads. They also teach you that if there's no victim, it's not a story. Really messed up, right? So I was there for 4 years, and I just tried to make the best of it that I could. I did a lot of health and medical reporting. I got to do a series with a man with Parkinson's disease and film his brain surgery, and became really close with him, because after you film somebody's awake brain surgery, you're bonded for life. They were at my wedding. I did a series with Holocaust survivors. I was nominated for an Emmy and won 2 Telly Awards and had some amazing ups. Thank you. And then in 2020, well, we know a lot of things happened in 2020, but in 2020, between mine and my husband's family, we lost 6 people. And none of the deaths were COVID related. And between that and sitting on the anchor desk, at this point I was anchoring, I had been promoted, I wasn't really reporting anymore, and I was regurgitating the same information every single day. There's a new COVID case, there's a new COVID case here, there's a vaccine, there's election fraud, the riots, the protests, the burning of the buildings. That's what 2020 was. And so couple that with my own personal tragedies that I was experiencing and the grieving that I was trying to do while trying to inform the world, who doesn't trust journalists, about what's going on, it really got to me. And I think what the loss taught me, because we lost some really young family members, is that life's too short to do anything that doesn't bring you joy. So I left. And I had just signed a brand new contract, a brand new 3-year contract, and I left about 4 months in. That's how pervasive the negativity was. It seeped into me. I dreaded going to work, and that's not who I am. And so I left. And so I went to a nonprofit called The Haven, which serves people with disabilities, amazing organization. I found them through doing stories on them when I first started at SNN, and always gravitated just toward people with disabilities and their spirit. They're so pure, they're truly angels. And I interviewed for that job 4 years later on my papa's birthday. And so I was like, okay, this feels familiar again, very cyclical. So I go to work for The Haven, and I got to tell some really amazing stories, really uplifting, really powerful stories about people with disabilities, their families, what this amazing place in town does for their loved ones. And I got that same feeling. It was the feeling of the connection with the person that you're interviewing, the ability to be able to be a voice for them when they don't know how to be a voice for themselves, and sharing that with the world just to make people feel good. There is one thing my news director taught me, and he said, you have to offer the viewer hope. No matter how sad a story may seem, no matter how tragic it may seem, you have to leave them feeling hopeful. And now I'm at this place where every story is hopeful. So how lucky am I? And so I started, instead of a newsletter, I started a newscast anchored by the clients with disabilities. I still do it for them. It's called Haven Happenings. And I started to get this feedback from the parents, because the anchor has cerebral palsy and is in a wheelchair, and these parents never thought they would see their kid anchoring the news. And the meteorologist has an intellectual disability, and he loves weather and loves talking about the weather. And these families never thought that they would see their loved ones, who people say aren't able to do things, thriving and leading a newscast. And so they started to say, wow, this is so positive. This is the only news I want to watch. The news is so negative. I want this to be our news. And that's when I got this feeling of, I need to be doing this for everybody, not just one organization. So at the end of last year, I got this idea for this good news network. I didn't know what I was going to call it. I just knew that the world needed it. This is something I love to do. And just got this feeling like this is my purpose. So I answered the call. And I kept getting these signs like, you need to do it, you need to pursue it. And then, of course, the rational people in my life were like, Hallie, don't leave a steadily paying job with good benefits. How are you going to make money? I'm like, I don't know. But I know that the world needs this, and I know that I'm the one that needs to do it. And so it was months of kind of going back and forth with those people who obviously support me and want what's best, but are the rational voice on my shoulder when I tend to lead more intuitively and with my heart in everything I do. So I decided that I'm going to do it. And it was really hard because the Haven to me was not just a job. It was, my heart was so attached to the clients, the people with disabilities, but also to the staff. I loved my boss, I loved the leadership team, and I was really, really, really nervous to have that conversation and say, I have to leave and do something on my own. I have to pursue my purpose. And I did it, and it was very scary. And there are some women in this room who really helped me through that day. And I get home that afternoon, and there's a pamphlet on my doorstep from Good News Pest Control. So I'm like, okay. So that's when I started No Blues News, which is a 501c3. We're a nonprofit. It's a good news only newscast. So back in the day when I was doing this reporting on people with Parkinson's, people who have survived the Holocaust yet have no hatred in their heart, those things don't lead a newscast. And there's something very wrong with that. With No Blues News, those are the only stories in the newscast. There was one this week about a girl in Connecticut whose dad suffered a massive stroke, and now she runs marathons and pushes her dad in a wheelchair. There was a story about an organization called Cake for Kids that is solely dedicated to baking birthday cakes for kids whose families can't afford them. Those are the stories that we really need to know. And something that's really important to note with No Blues News is I am not trying to replace the news. I have a lot of friends who are journalists. It's important to be informed. However, when you start your day with this shooting or this car crash or this person was indicted or whatever it is, it's addicting in a sense because we always say it's like a bad car crash you can't look away from. Well, that's exactly what it is. Physiologically, it affects you. Your blood pressure goes up. Your fists get clenched. You don't realize how consuming that first thing in the morning affects you on a cellular level. And then another thing it does is it also creates this negativity bias that truly makes you believe that what you're seeing is all that exists. So when you see the school shootings and you see these things, you believe our world is so horrible. But our world is so amazing. All the women in this room are proof of that. There are so many beautiful people around us who all they aim to do is uplift, unite, and inspire people. And those are the stories I want to share. That's the mission of No Blues News, to uplift, unite, and inspire. In a time when we are so divided, we've never been more divided, but what we're doing with No Blues News and with the people in this room, I feel the connection. Nobody can look at a story about a kid getting a birthday cake who's in foster care and say, I don't like that. And that's something that unites us all. We all just inherently want to feel connected to others. And if I can just do my small part in bringing those stories to light and sharing that cohesiveness with everybody, my hope is that it'll make the world better. So it's a weekly newscast. It's a 5 or so minute episode. I find all the stories myself. I source them, I edit them, I shoot them. I'm doing the fundraising, the marketing, the PR, the social media, all the things. And it's difficult, but I know that I answered the call. And it's a weird thing because you've never been more stressed if you're a business owner, yet more fulfilled if you took that leap. And I know that a lot of you know what I'm talking about. And so particularly this week, I was in Colorado last week for my sister's bachelorette party, and I got back and I was like, okay, I have to write this week's newscast, I have to shoot it, and Wednesday was insane. I woke up early, hadn't even written the script to the newscast, had to go film the newscast, had a day full of meetings, then had to go put the newscast together to be out by Thursday. And I knew that I had this busy week ahead of me, and so Monday I just kind of said to the universe, if I'm on the right path, which deep down we all know, right? We all know that we're on the right path, but sometimes we just need little reminders. But I said, if I'm on the right path, universe, just bring me a sign by the end of the day. This was Tuesday. And Tuesday night, I'm out at a brewery, and a guy comes up to me and says, "You're the No Blues News girl." And I said, "Yeah, I am." And he said, "Yeah, you spoke at my Rotary Club, and I love what you're doing." So I'm like, "Okay, I hear ya." Then the next day, frazzled, running around, haven't written my newscast script, go to film it. I'm pulling out of the studio, and I'm behind a pickup truck, and the license plate says Anchorman, A-N-K-R, man. And then yesterday, we had a little pre-Bluebird event with all the speakers to meet and touch base. And on my way home, I'm behind a Good News Pest Control pickup truck. And all of these things happen because I answered the call. How many of you have answered the call? It's not easy. I actually pulled a card this morning from my Oracle deck, and I just said, "Universe, what is one message that I really need to leave these women with today?" And I literally pulled the card that said, "Answer the call." And the subtitle was, "What's your soul's calling?" And some people call it answering the call. Some people call it living your purpose. Robert Holden calls it a golden thread that pulls you in these different directions. Carl Jung called answering the call the irrational factor. It doesn't always make sense. And a lot of us wait for this step-by-step, perfect instructional plan to take that leap. And you might have noticed my talk was titled Just as Fast, because we find out that these shootings or these indictments or these riots happen in a second with a push notification. But what if we found out about the kid getting a birthday cake just as fast? What if we found out about a man defying Parkinson's just as fast? What if we found out about someone celebrating her 120th birthday just as fast? What would that do for us? And so my call to action today for you, there's two ways that we can help spread this goodness just as fast as the bad spreads. Number one's the easy way. Number one is watching No Blues News, sharing it with a friend, saying, "Hey, I think this will brighten your day," subscribing on YouTube, advertising your business to help it grow. Those are the easy ways to make news spread just as fast. The harder way is by answering the call, answering your call and taking your leap. Because when we do that and we are all acting from a place of spiritual alignment in our actions every day, we raise our frequency and our vibration. And then we start to attract people who are of that same frequency and vibration. And a good example of that connection was yesterday I was at a coffee shop that I never go to, and Sammy, the photographer, overheard me talking to the woman I was with about our networking group. And she said, "Oh, I'm part of that group too. What chapter are you in?" And she asked what I did, and I told her, and she said, I've heard of that. Where have I heard of that? And it was because she was photographing Bluebird today and had seen my face on some of the marketing. And it gives me goosebumps. And I only tell you these things because I never would have answered the call if I wasn't open to all of these signs and all of these synchronicities. So when we answer the call and we level up, it creates magic. This connection creates magic. And when we create that magic, there's a lot of really magical content out there for good stories. And then those good stories travel, and we become better. So what I will leave you with, if you are contemplating answering the call, is my favorite quote from John Burroughs, which is, "Leap and the net will appear." Hear that one. Leap and the net will appear. Because I don't know where my next donation's coming from. I don't know where my next advertiser is coming from. I don't know where my next story is coming from. But I don't care. And that probably stresses a lot of you out. But I know that this is my purpose, and being in a room that has the energy like today's, I've never felt more certain in that purpose. So I thank all of you for reinforcing that for me. Thank you.